have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And in the news this week, the Ohio Attorney General has blocked a same-sex marriage vote there, brought by our side.
Yeah, we'll give you the details on that. And in Maryland, the priest who refused communion to the lesbian at her mother's funeral has been put on leave.
More details on the brutal killings of gay men in Iraq by the Mujahideen.
And in St. Petersburg, Russia, the governor there has signed the bill that forbids promotion of homosexuality.
We learned that President Obama promised in 2008, when he was running for president, to issue an executive order barring federal contractors from discriminating on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. But you might have noticed he has not followed through on that yet. So there's a big campaign to get him to do so.
Yeah. HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, is calling on Mitt Romney to fire his anti-gay national finance chair. Are they saying that that's the only anti-gay employee he has? What about him?
Yeah, exactly. He should fire himself.
Exactly.
He likes firing people. Congressman Donald Payne, on a more serious note, who was an ally of the LGBT movement from New Jersey, has died at the age of 77.
Anglican and Catholic church leaders are ganging up to stop same-sex marriage in Britain as the Conservative government unveils its bill to legalize it this week.
Denmark's prime minister has promised a marriage bill this year.
A new approach to attacking hidden HIV in the body is unveiled at the big conference on retrovirals and opportunistic infections this week.
The Department of Health and Human Services is exploring a new system to allow men who've had sex with men to donate blood. Of course, the system now is you got to lie on the form if you want to donate blood.
You may still have to lie. I'm not sure they're going to get much farther with this.
Logo TV is going less gay.
And I have a quiz for you. Here, let's see who's as observant as I. There were 2 Sarah Palin movies this week.
I saw Game Change.
Me too, on HBO. But there was another one, The Undefeated, that's the conservative version. And buried in there at the end is a very clever gay reference. So if you figure it out, if you can know what I'm talking about before the end of this show, this is an honor system, I'll give you a big prize. I don't know what it is yet, but I feel safe that I'm the only one who spotted this.
Please don't tell me she comes out at the end.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start with Ohio. There was a group there that proposed putting on the ballot an amendment to amend the Constitution there to allow same-sex marriage because it's forbidden there in Ohio.
Right.
And they wrote it up, and
they had to go through a 2-step process. Right. They had to first submit 1,000 signatures in support of this to the Ohio Attorney General, who would then certify those so that they could go out and gather almost 400,000 signatures to get it on the ballot, either this year or next year. Probably next year.
The Attorney General is Mike DeWine, a Santorum supporter, by the way.
Yes.
So he says, this ain't going to work. The summary is longer than the actual amendment. The summary says political subdivisions would retain certain rights, but the actual amendment doesn't say this. And finally, the summary says, well, it goes on and on. So he's not allowing it to go on to the ballot.
Now, my question is, do they have a chance to go back, rewrite it, gain another 1,000 signatures, and start over?
I don't know.
I would suspect they do, but I would suspect he's looking for any excuse to stop it. But meanwhile, on March 24th in Cleveland, Ohio, they are planning to hold the largest illegal mass wedding ever. 200 couples have registered so far. You can join them. There are going to be a dozen clergy performing ceremonies that are not legal. photographers, a cupcake tower, a reception. They're doing the whole thing. It's going to be at 11 a.m. in Willard Park on March 24th in Cleveland. So if you want to go out and protest what's going on in Ohio, this is a good opportunity to do it.
Well, you know, we have a vote on same-sex marriage coming up in North Carolina in May to coincide with the Republican primary.
May 8th.
Yeah, and
Isn't there also now a Democratic primary because the governor is
not sure.
Not running for re-election? Bev Perdue.
Not sure. And you know, Obama, by the way, has been getting more votes running in some of these states than the Republican candidates combined.
Exactly.
Which is interesting, although he's not out of the woods yet. Anyway, latest poll out of North Carolina on this, 54.2% surveyed either oppose or strongly oppose the amendment to the Constitution that would ban same-sex marriage, and 37.8% say that they support Amendment 1. So, I mean, look, we had pretty decent polls going into California, and we lost.
Well, yeah, I'm not optimistic about polls, but I am optimistic about the fact that we're ramping up the campaign there in North Carolina, and on April 1st, Ted Olson, the Republican lawyer, is going to Greensboro, North Carolina, for a big rally at the International Civil Rights Center and Museum, which is the site of the old Woolworths where the 1960 civil rights sit-in took place. So this is very significant, and he's going to appear at this rally. And then 6 days later, Zach Walls, who was the kid from Iowa who testified to the legislature about his two moms and had the biggest YouTube video hit last year, he is going to Charlotte, North Carolina, to speak on behalf of our side against this constitutional amendment.
Well, I was very impressed watching a half-hour video from Wake County in North Carolina, where the chair of the commission there is running for Congress, and he brought a resolution supporting Amendment 1. Everybody who stood up to testify testified against it, except one lobbyist. There were scores of people. He wouldn't even look at them. They kept having to say, "Would you please look me in the eye while I'm trying to talk to you?" And then they voted to do this. So that was very encouraging, although we lost the vote because they have a Republican majority. But I hope people are waking up that this means you got to vote for the Wake County commissioners too and get some better ones. I mean,
well,
if 99% of you oppose this thing.
And alternatively, in Charlotte, the city council or commission or whatever there voted to condemn this amendment. So this is a hot issue in North Carolina, and my first response when this was proposed was, no way can we win in North Carolina.
Obama won North Carolina.
But still, we've lost every other vote like this everywhere.
Except for Arizona, when they tried to also ban domestic partnerships.
And in fact, this constitutional amendment would hurt more than same-sex couples. There are all sorts of implications for any kind of partnership benefits on this, and that's part of the campaign too. But May 8th in North Carolina is this vote, and it's something we really have to pay attention to.
And the constitutional amendment in Pennsylvania was being considered by the House State Government Committee, and they have managed to block it.
Excellent. New Hampshire, on the other hand, next week the legislature will vote on the proposal to repeal same-sex marriage there, which has now been legal for several years. And the Republican-dominated, Tea Party-dominated legislature is expected to vote for repeal, which will be extremely depressing. The governor has promised to veto that, but then the fight begins. Can the legislature override the veto?
They elect a new legislature this year?
I don't know.
Okay.
But they're going through all sorts of contortions, and one of the Republican legislators this week proposed yet another version of this, saying, well, we'll reinstitute civil unions and we'll hold a referendum among the citizens that isn't binding, is just sort of advisory. Well, 60% of the people in New Hampshire are against repealing this.
But again,
I don't know.
Out in Illinois, our old friend Rick Garcia has been hired by something called the Civil Rights Agenda, and he's going to be working on the marriage equality campaign there in Illinois. He was one of the founders of Equality Illinois,
and a prime mover in getting civil unions legalized in Illinois,
and a gay rights law. Yeah.
The Kennedy Library in Massachusetts is going to present one of its annual Profiles in Courage Awards, or 3 of them, to the 3 Iowa Supreme Court justices who lost their seats after they found right to same-sex marriage in the Iowa Constitution. And they are being honored for their willingness to stand up and do that. So that should be a lovely ceremony at the Kennedy Library.
Great.
And also a lovely ceremony coming up. Our guest last week, New York City City Council Speaker Chris Quinn and her longtime partner Kim Catullo have announced that they will marry on May 19th here in New York.
With their 80-something-year-old fathers there, which is something that Chris talked about quite a bit.
Yes.
Wanting to be able to have her father and Kim's father see them do that.
Okay.
All right. Well.
Now, President Obama, you want to?
Well, I mean, it came out that when he was running for president, that he actually told some group that, I'll sign an executive order requiring contractors not to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation. So there's a new big push on this. Coming from, the ACLU is saying it's the most important step Obama can take to fight job bias against gay people because we're not able to get the Employment Non-Discrimination Act through a Republican-dominated House.
Right.
So that's why they're pushing. They're getting lots of organizations to sign on.
He has instituted administratively various job protections across parts of the federal government. This is considered the next step forward to require contractors.
But he's not making a commitment on it.
Well, the other thing is that most of the major federal contractors already have employment non-discrimination rules in place, including all the major defense contractors. So it's not as if this would be imposing some onerous new regulations.
And then 70 organizations are calling on him to endorse the anti-bullying bill that is being pushed in Congress, which again doesn't have a chance of passing the House under the current regime, but he will not commit about that. He supports the goals of the bill, but not necessarily.
Well, the most interesting news story on bullying is about this movie Bully, which is going viral, getting support like wildfire, whether it's the Ellen DeGeneres show or other celebrities or whatever.
Rated R.
Well, it was made by the Harvey Weinstein Company. It's a half-hour film. It was rated R by one vote of the rating board, the motion picture, whatever. And so there is this huge campaign that's now been signed on to by hundreds of thousands of people to get the rating board to change from an R to a PG-13 so that kids who are actually bullies or victims of bullies can see the film. Because it is crazy to give it an R rating and limit who can see it. So it'll be interesting to see whether this campaign succeeds. But meanwhile, the go ahead.
I was gonna say, speaking of bullies, there's Mitt Romney's finance chair. His name is Frank Vandersloot, and his life's mission has been to attack LGBT people, hundreds of thousands of dollars to spread falsehoods about gay people. This is coming from the Human Rights Campaign, among other groups, and they're calling on 15,000 people have signed a petition to have him fired as the campaign finance director.
Well, really?
I mean, he's an anti-gay extremist. I mean, Romney tries to act like he's okay with gay rights.
Okay. Maybe I'm just being too cynical.
And then our
well, how about Rick Santorum? He's got Maggie Gallagher campaigning with him.
Wow.
She wait. People who go to his events and start asking questions about social issues, escorted out of the events.
Oh my God! No, he wants to talk about them. We may have some social issues on the agenda in New York, where our Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a strong supporter of LGBT rights, is running again. She fulfilled Hillary's term. She had to run for office in 2010. Now she's got to run for again in 2012. A senator But it looks like the candidate against her is going to be Bob Turner, the one who took Anthony Weiner's seat, the Republican, who was an opponent of same-sex marriage.
We love Kirsten.
And another woman who said she was going to run for the seat is a woman named Wendy Long, who it turns out was one of the founders of the Dartmouth Review, which used to publish lists of members of the Gay Student Association in the paper, that kind of stuff.
Not as an honorific.
No. Ran a column against Black English, also ran a quote from Hitler, which was quite controversial. Brian Elner, who worked with the Human Rights Campaign on the marriage thing in New York, was at the school at the time and was one of the leaders of the fight against it. I mean, she was working with that guy, Dinesh D'Souza, on that thing.
Very right-wing.
So I don't think she's going to be a senator from New York.
Yeah. And finally, or what I have here, in the political realm, the Advocate magazine sent candidate questionnaires to all the presidential candidates. None of the major candidates filled out the questionnaire. Fred Karger did, the out gay Republican candidate, and Gary Johnson, the former governor of New Mexico, neither of whom is getting more than 1% of the vote anywhere. The Obama people sent a statement, which is their usual litany of here are all the wonderful things I've done, but refused to answer the exact questionnaire.
No, that can get you into trouble, as Obama has found out.
So what the Advocate did was they went through all the campaign's past statements and picked out stuff so that they could answer all the questions they asked. So if you look at the Advocate, you can, if there's any question in your mind where these people stand, you can check it out in the Advocate.
We mourn the loss of Donald Payne. He was the congressman from Newark for a long time and a strong supporter of LGBT rights. They're already saying that a Newark City councilman named Ron Rice Jr. is the most likely to succeed him, and he's a strong supporter of LGBT rights.
I thought there was going to be a big fight there, including Donald Payne's son or whatever.
There may be a fight, but this is the...
Rice is a good guy.
Yeah.
We also have been mourning the death of local gay man John Lawback, murdered here in Chelsea, New York. And the idea was that he found a hookup for sex online and was then murdered and robbed by...
It was rentboy.com. It was somebody probably he hired, probably. And
well, as it turns out now, it may be two people.
Right.
One of whom was caught on an ATM camera trying to use his bank card.
Well, the point is they've identified the suspects, but they're not in custody yet, so you want to take a look at this next film, and if you know these people, call the police.
Police identify two suspects wanted in connection with the death of a 57-year-old Chelsea man. Investigators are looking for 30-year-old Edwin Faulkner and 26-year-old Juan Carlos Martinez Herrera. Sources say John Lawback paid the two men to have sex with him. Lawback's body was found March 2nd inside his West 22nd Street apartment. Sources say his hands, feet, and mouth were bound with duct tape, and he had a towel over his face.
These guys have long criminal records that the police have. Now, the Anti-Violence Project, and if you go to avp.org, avp.org, has tips for people who are, when you hook up with somebody, the things you have to keep in mind when you're going to bring somebody to your home, et cetera, to protect yourself. And they're going to be leafleting the neighborhood and trying to alert people, but it's something everybody should read about and know about who engages in that activity. It's not a bad activity to engage in, but you want to be safe, like everything.
Exactly. Now, we're not anti-sex here.
No.
But we are anti-murder and anti-taking your life in your hands.
I mean, one of the simple things that anybody can do, whether you're just picking somebody up in a bar or the street or whatever, is make sure someone else meets that person, the bartender or somebody. You introduce them to somebody, even a shopkeeper on the way home, somebody who will see you with that person so that they can be identified later if anything happens. And that inhibits violence.
Yes. And that includes online hookups, find a way to meet maybe outside your home.
At a diner, go to a bar, whatever, but don't just have them come on over.
All right. You remember Gaithersburg, Maryland, where the Catholic priest refused communion to a lesbian at her mother's funeral when he realized she had a same-sex partner there. He has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. He's been accused of intimidating behavior against the staff and others at the church.
He's a very zealous priest.
He certainly is.
He is. So it's not about this incident.
No, it's about a pattern of behavior.
And I'll tell you, that full-page ad we saw in the Times this week, Freedom from Religion Foundation, an ad saying it's time to consider quitting the Catholic Church and telling people why. It's the things we've been saying on the show forever. Why do you put up with that disgraceful, anti-woman, anti-gay religion? And a full-page ad in the Times. I'm just terrific.
And Martin Sheen had an interesting response when he was asked why he had participated in the 8 performance about the Prop 8 trial as a devout Catholic. Yeah. And he said, I'm a devout Catholic for the values, not for the church. The church and the values of the human rights values are different from the church itself.
Yeah, the head of the Catholic League, who was this guy, William Donahue, you see him on national television shows all the time, attacking us mostly. We learned he did not take a vow of poverty. He makes $408,000 a year. Nice work if you can get it to spew hate.
Meanwhile, another case of a little less violent abuse. A young lesbian who is a student at Rochester College in Rochester, Michigan, has been reprimanded because they are a private religious
Christian
school, has been reprimanded for posting on her Facebook page a banner, a rainbow banner that said, "Out Proud Lesbian." Local news report on that.
19-year-old Kaya Zabel tells me her friends and her family have all supported her decision to come out of the closet, but her school is a different story.
I shouldn't be punished for being honest.
Kaya Zabel's a student at Rochester College. She says the school seemed to be a perfect fit.
It had the Christian values. It was a small school, and it's really close because I grew up in Rochester.
But now she says she's on the verge of being kicked out. It all started when Kaya decided to tell the world something she says she's always known.
I came out as a lesbian on Facebook.
Then she posted this on her page.
I made a Facebook cover picture, and it said, "Out Proud Lesbian."
And that's when the dean of students got involved.
He went to my page and looked at it and deemed it inappropriate.
In this email that Kaya says came from Dean of Students Brian Cole, he tells Kaya, quote, "I appreciate your movement towards honesty and being the real you, but I'm going to have to insist that you change your Facebook banner picture. Out Proud Lesbian is not really consistent with the heritage of Rochester College and has proven to already be disruptive among fellow students who are really bothered by it." He ends by saying her conduct is threatening her future living on campus. Kaya says the dean went even further during a meeting. He actually asked you to hide that you were being a lesbian.
I have to hide it, and I can't talk about it or anything, and I have to conform to everything the school says. I just told him it wasn't fair, and I told him it was discrimination.
I spoke with the dean of students briefly over the phone, but he refused to comment, and we have not received a response from school officials. But Rochester College's own code of conduct clearly states sex is supposed to be between a husband and wife. Kaya says she's not asking to have sex. She's asking to be herself.
Christians are supposed to love others as they love themselves. Like, why am I being punished for being who I am?
In Rochester, I'm Alexis Wiley, Fox 2 News.
Well, the president of the college, Rubel Shelley, issued a statement saying she's not been dismissed or threatened with dismissal from the college, but then goes on to say, students who find themselves uncomfortable with our standards always have other options at other schools. So what the hell is that other than a threat to get the hell out? And then segueing to Facebook, since she posted on Facebook, we have one of the founders of Facebook, Chris Hughes, I believe was Zuckerman's roommate.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah, he's rich. I should get to know him. Anyway, get to know Chris Hughes. He's gay. He's 28 years old, and he is now taking over the reins of the New Republic magazine, the one that Andrew Sullivan used to be the editor of. And anyway, it sounds like he doesn't expect to make any money doing that, but he hopes to contribute to substantial journalism.
Yes, that would be nice. Many have tried before at the New Republic. But our young lesbian in Michigan is not the only student under attack for her outness or her sympathy to the LGBT community. In Colorado Springs, Colorado, surprise, Palmer High School, the yearbook staff is putting together the yearbook, and they have a page called Relationships, and they show various couples and people, blah, 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 blah. And they show...
It's not the Kama Sutra.
No, they show two young women holding hands.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yikes. Well, they have been fired from the yearbook, the people who put this together, and here is a local news report about all this.
A yearbook dispute. It's going on at Palmer High School. It's over allegations of discrimination. KRDO News Channel 13's Jeff Tyler is digging into this one for you. He joins us now with all the details. Jeff?
Well, I talked to students at this high school, Palmer High School, and they actually told me that 2 students were removed from the yearbook staff and another 2 actually quit over decisions made by a yearbook staff member and advisor. Now, some of the students say that they actually found those decisions unethical.
She told me to, in these words exactly, she said, you either cut the gay couple or I cut the page.
Rodolfo Trabulio and Anna Carmichael say their yearbook advisor told them that a lesbian couple holding hands could not be on a page they were creating about high school relationships. But the school district says there is another reason.
When the photographs came back for that page, there was too much PDA, and that's against Palmer's policy.
But if you look at these pictures from last year's yearbook, you can see several forms of public displays of affection. Compare that to the picture that students say was considered out of bounds.
Regardless of any type of situation within the photograph, if there's PDA, it goes against policy, it's going to get cut.
At that point, the relationship page was cut and replaced by a page called diversity.
I think it was the vision of the class to do a page that was focused on diversity and to do a collage of all of the diverse cultures, backgrounds, histories of the students over at Palmer.
But Carmichael says the yearbook advisor came up with a new restriction.
No names, only the labels. And so for a picture of a Muslim, she wanted us to label them as a Muslim.
But District 11 says the diversity page was supposed to be more of a collage and would not have encouraged segregation.
No way that we would be able to discriminate in any way, shape, or form, nor find that right or appropriate.
Well, all you've accomplished, of course, is drawing more attention to lesbianism at your school.
Yeah.
And those 2 kids who quit over this are heroes.
Absolutely, and we see more and more of that, and it's just fantastic.
Because they stand up to bullies.
Yeah.
Well, there was supposed to be an assembly on bullying at Dunkerton, Iowa, at a high school there. Yeah. And they brought in a Minnesota preacher man band called the Junkyard Prophet, and this leader of this band just ended up, saying anti-gay stuff, all kinds of things. It was just outrageous.
Well, it's not unlike what we showed a couple of weeks ago on this show with religious fundamentalists going into public schools and recruiting people for Jesus and spewing their venom. And this apparently is happening in the public school system across this country.
One parent said, they told my daughter, the girls, that they were going to have mud on their wedding dresses if they weren't virgins. I mean, this is the kind of stuff. It's outrageous.
No one in the administration of the school stepped in to object to any of this.
And they told the gays they were going to die before the age of 42. That's just outrageous.
Well, that's the old Paul Cameron stuff where he looked at 6 obituaries and decided that was the...
Paul Cameron is a quack who was thrown out of the American Psychological Association. I've debated many times over the years.
To combat things like this, we have in Kansas City, Missouri, a new community center called the Lighthouse that has been funded by Shelley Wright, the country singer who came out in the last couple of years. She has a foundation called Like Me organization. Because the title of her autobiography was Like Me. Now, I don't know if that's, you should like me or like me, but maybe both.
It's a play on words.
It is. But she has opened this new LGBT community center, the Lighthouse in Kansas City, Missouri, and says she was bullied in high school, although there was one comment on the website of a guy who says that she picked on people in high school.
Wow.
So, interesting. But if you want to find out more about this organization and other community centers that she plans to open, you can go to likemelighthouse.org, which will give you more information about this.
And in New York, it took many, many years to pass an anti-bullying bill on a statewide basis, and it passed a couple of years ago, and it's not even going into effect until it was like 2 years later. Well, the regulations have been issued, and Danny O'Donnell, our Assembly member friend, brought this to our attention, that the new regulations say these regulations will not apply to charter schools. I mean, he's, of course, raising hell. We will all raise hell about this. This is an outrage. They're public schools.
Yeah. In Omaha, Nebraska, the city council has passed a non-discrimination law that applies to employment and public accommodations and covers sexual orientation and gender identity and expression.
Congratulations, Omaha. And do you know this is the 40th anniversary of the first bill passed in the country to protect people on the basis of sexual orientation? Do you know where it was?
Minnesota.
It was East Lansing, Michigan, Ann.
Whoa.
That was the first one. That's the 40th.
That was a local one.
The first local one that was passed. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
There, I mean, Minnesota was very early in the 70. Well, yes, but also in terms of cities. A lot of them passed it around 72 to 74.
Right.
And New York almost did, then we didn't get it until 86. But I mean, many cities.
There was a wave then, and that's when Boulder, Colorado went
Right.
through its brief marriage license issuing thing, too.
But bad news from Chicago, where Wang's, a gay bar in Boys Town, has been discriminating against women, apparently.
No women after 11 p.m.
Well, it's actually a men-only sign on the drink menu after 11 p.m. That's an outrage.
It's past my bedtime.
Well, good for you.
There is a new law in Utah. Not only is sex education to be abstinence only, but it also says no sex until marriage, no mention of homosexuality or contraception.
And if anybody asks you about homosexuality, you can't answer the question. That's the law now. This is whatever happened to free speech.
We're living in a crazy world. But good news from the military, where they have surveyed members since Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal and found 69% of those answering the survey said the repeal has had no effect. And only 13%, about 1 out of 8, continue to oppose repeal. It's too late.
Equality California has at least found an interim executive director, and her name is Lori Hasenkamp, who happens to be a woman who happens to be married to a man, but a longtime supporter of Equality California. They got a lot of work to do out there.
There are gay people who need jobs.
I wonder
President Obama has signed the trespass bill. We told you a little about this last week. This is a bad, bad thing. This says that if you demonstrate on federal property, at any,
Right.
It is a federal offense now to demonstrate at any event of special national significance.
This is just outrageous.
Which is any speech by a politician anywhere, any presidential candidates, and anybody who has Secret Service protection.
It's just outrageous.
They can pick you up for anything, anytime, anywhere.
Heil Hitler.
It is really, really
it's
bad.
just outrageous. And what they're about to do to Bradley Manning is outrageous. Is going to shut down, getting information for reporters and things like that. Another outrage.
I feel like we're caught in the pincers of it coming two ways. We've got these laws that are shutting down any dissemination of information, free speech, protesting, and then you got the right wing coming into public schools and recruiting people for Jesus.
Taking advantage of free speech.
Yes, they have free speech. It's scary. And the Southern Poverty Law Center has just issued a report naming 11 new anti-gay hate groups.
And they have some fun names. Save California. You can run, but you cannot hide.
Some of them are armed militias, which they say are skyrocketing.
Yikes.
The Patriot movement is growing. In 2008, they listed 149 of these armed militias and right-wing groups. 3 years later, in 2011, 1,274 groups.
I said it before and I'll say it again.
Yikes.
We got to get organized, folks, as well. And I'm not talking about getting guns, although, I don't know.
No, don't even.
No,
don't
I'm
even
not. I'm
joke
against
about
violence.
that.
No,
Yeah,
no,
I
I'm
know
not
you
making a
are.
joke. I'm just saying, well, shoot. What's going to happen if, they're the only ones with the guns?
Shoot, so to speak.
Yes.
In Houston, good news, an immigration judge there in Houston, an immigration judge in Houston
Yes.
has stopped the deportation of a Costa Rican gay man who married a U.S. gay man in California when it was legal there. He still has no legal right to work in this country, but he is not deportable. He was complaining he had left an abusive ex-lover in Costa Rica, but Costa Rica is not a country that is officially anti-gay in the way that a lot of other Central American countries are, or other countries in the world. So the fact that this judge stopped the deportation really had more to do with acknowledging informally the California marriage of these two men than, saving him from going back to Uganda or something. So that is an interesting decision. And I would like to bid a premature but fond adieu to Sue Simmons, our local WNBC anchor and closeted lesbian.
She's been on for like 30 years.
She has, and I used to refer to her a lot on this show as a closeted lesbian. She was the #1 anchor on local news in New York. She's 68 years old. Her partner, Chuck Scarborough, on the news, also 68.
They're keeping him.
He stays, she goes. Someone once called me at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, some anonymous voice saying, "Leave Sue Simmons alone."
Sue, we know you watch the show. We'd love to have you on. In fact, if you'd like to sub for one of us when we're on vacation or something, we'd be happy to have you.
We love you,
but,
Sue.
Yes.
It's really a shame. I will miss Sue.
Well.
All right, international news.
Well, the worst news that more and more details are pouring out about is this, and is this killing of mostly gay men in Iraq.
Yeah.
There's been some reference to these men as emos, or people who adopt an alternative style in terms of their dress. And there's estimates from 20 to 40 to 90 people being killed this way
They're clearly
in
being
recent
targeted.
weeks.
They're being targeted. And
Well, a leaflet is prepared with your name on it. We know where you live. We know who you are. Stop dressing this way, or you'll be dead. And then if you don't, they take concrete blocks and bash your head in.
Or throw you off a roof.
This is the way that they're going after these guys. People are terrorized. I have to say, if I lived there, now this is a picture in the Times of gay men. These are gay men shot from the back, just so that not shot in the back, shot from the back in the photograph, so that you can see a little bit of the styles that they've adopted. But I have to say, it's a crazy environment there.
It's an attack on modernism.
Sure.
This is modern youth who have adopted new styles of dressing and acting. Whether that symbolizes gay to them or gay symbolizes modern to them, that needs to be sorted out.
We got a note from a viewer who says, my partner is from Iraq, and he tells me a lot of these fashion murders, as they're called, are actually aimed at gay teen and young men or transgendered who dress or act gay.
They're accused of being Satanists. These are, rogue militias who are doing this, but with the cooperation or the collaboration of the Iraqi government, which is doing nothing to stop it or shut it down.
The police department actually does have a branch that is supposed to look at these things and try to stop these. Well, I'm just saying, it's not as if they haven't even thought about it, but they try to act like the problem isn't there.
The U.S. Embassy embassy, however, is speaking up and has objected to this quite vociferously.
They are strongly condemning this. When they said NGOs in Iraq brought the issue to their attention. They immediately expressed concern to the government of Iraq, urged immediate measures to combat the violence, and so they're trying. But it's we've unleashed the hounds of hell over there. And that's where this is coming from.
Modernism is paying the price as we have empowered the right-wing forces.
Right.
And the right-wing
even what's his name? What's his name? Sadr in Sadr City, the guy, the big mullah is, saying, well, he's not approving of these killings. He said the law should deal with them, not.
No, these are rogue militias.
Right.
And not so rogue, but also dangerous, is the governor of St. Petersburg in Russia, who, after it passed 3 readings in the St. Petersburg Council, signed the no promotion of homosexuality bill. This is supposed to ban propaganda, but propaganda in this context means being out,
right,
saying who you are. Any public mention of homosexuality is prosecutable.
So it's vague and overbroad, as are the penalties. You can be fined from 5,000 rubles, which is about $170, to 500,000 rubles under the law. Now, the gay rights activists there are saying that it's part of a wider government initiative, supported by the Orthodox Church there, to crack down on protest, civic activity, and liberalization.
Yes.
That's what they're after.
Yes.
They just don't want anybody to protest.
Well, this gives them a legal basis to stop protests and any modernization.
I mean, they got rid of the laws against homosexuality there 20 years ago. After
20 years ago. It's like us in the 70s.
Yeah, I guess so.
So these laws have now passed in 4 cities in Russia, but they are under appeal by activists to the European Court of Human Rights. Not that has ever gotten Russia to change anything it does.
I mean, a lot of Eastern Europe is anti-gay, but a lot of the rest of Eastern Europe wants to be part of the European Union and all those kinds of things, and they have passed better laws.
Yes, it's a long-term process, as was demonstrated when the UN Human Rights Council held a hearing last week on LGBT issues. It was a very moving hearing. Lots of people spoke from many countries around the world, and the head of the UN issued a statement.
Ban Ki-moon.
But all the Islamic countries walked out and wouldn't even be present at the hearing.
Well, to hear the head of the UN say to gay people, LGBT people, and he used the terms, you're not alone, your struggle to end violence and discrimination is a shared struggle. Any attack on you is an attack on the universal values of the United Nations that I have sworn to defend and uphold. That kind of stuff is very, very strong.
It is. It's great. And it leads us to believe that we are on a positive path.
Yep.
But meanwhile, we see all these other things happening along the way that do not sound good.
And a lot of brave activists from around the world, from countries where it's very tough to be open.
Exactly. In Santiago, Chile, we told you about a 24-year-old gay man who had been brutally attacked by some neo-Nazi young men. And was in a coma after having, swastikas carved in his belly and cigarette burns and his ear cut off. They have now arrested 4 young neo-Nazi men, ages 19 to 26, who have confessed. Well, they're fine with it. The guy who was attacked is coming out of the coma, but so that's good news. But man, what he went through.
Right. Now, we've been telling you this week, and as we tape, it hasn't been issued already, but, Britain is finally going to come out with its consultation paper, which is how they're going to go about legalizing same-sex marriage. They already have civil partnerships over there, and it's going to come out this week. And David Cameron, who's the Prime Minister, conservative, very, very supportive of it, as he was during the campaign.
Visiting our president here. Do you think they'll talk about it? No.
Well, and again, the big difference, of course, over there is that churches are not just exempt from having to do it, of course, as they are everywhere, but they're forbidden to do same-sex marriages. Even if you're Quakers and you like to do it, you can't do it over there. It's against the law. They can tell a religion what to do. Whereas here, MCC was doing same-sex marriages in 1968 or something, before Stonewall.
The Catholic Church was doing them 2,000 years ago.
There you are. Well, wait a minute. Here's one of the interesting wrinkles in the British thing. So you've got the Catholics and the Anglicans speaking out against it, the bishops and things.
Against the legalization of marriage.
Yes. Well, one of them brought up a very interesting thing. He says the government could face legal problems changing the definition because the definition is in the 1662 prayer book and Article 30 of the Church of England, which are both acts of Parliament. So if you're going to change this, you got to change the prayer book. You know how hard that is.
It makes my head hurt.
Well, it's funny.
Well, yes. And meanwhile, the Catholic Cardinal of Scotland says that gay people are an evil in the room and that legalizing marriage between same-sex partners is madness.
And I got a Facebook message from a friend who said that the early sponsors of gay rights organizations in Scotland was Catholic parishes that let them meet and sponsored them there and invested. Again, you're talking about the 70s when there was a period of opening up and things like that.
It's all cyclical. And Tony Blair, who converted to Catholicism after he left being prime minister because his wife is Catholic, has come out in support of legalizing same-sex marriage.
There you are. How about that? Maybe they'll throw him out of the church. Well, one of the interesting things in Britain is Catholic weddings are not legal. They don't mean anything. Only Church of England weddings are considered legal weddings.
So you're a bastard if
you
have
to get a civil ceremony if you're in any other church if you want to be married, except in the Anglican Church.
Wow.
Now, but actually,
what a crazy world.
I've left off the headline.
Okay.
Because after all these statements by all these creeps who were condemning this thing, the Equalities Minister for Britain, Lynn Featherstone, said, these guys are in the Dark Ages. Can you imagine an American public official saying anything like that about a church official? They're living in the Dark Ages. And she's,
yes, half of them. American officials.
Anyway, and she's from the conservative, well, she happens to be a liberal Democrat.
Well, maybe a little more sanity in Denmark, where which was, as you, I'm sure, remember, the first country in 1989 to legalize civil unions between same-sex partners, but has defeated all attempts to convert that to marriage ever since. But the Prime Minister has now said that he is submitting a new same-sex marriage law this year, expects it to pass, expects it to be legal by June, and will explicitly allow churches who want to perform same-sex marriages as well as civil authorities.
And hacktivists from Anonymous in Italy have gone after the Roman Catholic Church specifically because of their anti-gay things, among other things, and the ways they treat women and contraception and all those kinds of things.
Nice. And in Ireland, Colin Farrell and his gay brother Eamon are promoting a campaign called Stand Up, Don't Stand for Homophobic Bullying.
And I have to admit, I had never heard of Kony 2012 before the last couple of weeks.
Oh,
but
problematic.
We are learning that this worldwide phenomenon with 74, probably 100 million hits by now, Invisible Children is the group. A lot of their big funders are these right-wing religious Christian groups that want to prop up the current Uganda regime, which is so friendly to Christian evangelization in Uganda. So,
and the Kill the Gays bill.
I got problems with this.
It is very problematic. And before jumping on that bandwagon,
like Oprah Winfrey, who gave them $2 million.
Yikes! And is this just a fundraising campaign for right-wing evangelicals? This leader thereafter is a bad guy, but he seems
he's been out of the picture for 20 whatever. He's been
a
long time. He's not even a factor anymore.
So it's dicey.
And the money is not really reaching children and the people they're claiming to help.
All right, AIDS news.
Yeah.
Well, interesting news from the CROI conference in Seattle.
The Conference on Retroviruses and Opportunistic Infections. Well, first of all, they're saying there's no big breakthrough, but they did, some scientists, I think they're out of Merck and other places, University of North Carolina, have found a way to flush out the latent HIV infection from hiding using a drug that it's a cancer drug, and it gets those particles out, and where you can finally maybe go after them, because you can't have a cure unless you can get these hidden viruses.
Well, this was always the issue, and when Dr. David Ho, 20 years ago or 15, promised that he was going to eradicate HIV. He was wrong, because he couldn't get to those hidden wells of HIV in the body.
People would become undetectable because they were no longer producing, I guess, antibodies, but the hidden virus was there and could always come back.
Thus, you have to stay on these drugs for a lifetime.
Which is problematic.
So the point is to be able to get all the HIV, and if this is promising, that is great news.
It is great news.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is seeking public comment on a proposal for a pilot study for alternative blood donor deferral criteria, meaning they would no longer, the current system says if you are a man who has had sex with a man sometime, even once since 1977, you cannot donate blood.
I have not been able to donate blood, because I did do that. Since 77, anyway.
It's crazy. All that is risk assessment and saying that gay men are more likely to have HIV than others, therefore we're going to exclude them completely, and that will reduce the potential HIV transmission. None of it takes into account that HIV is a virus, can be anywhere, is entirely dependent on risk behavior. So now they're looking at this again, and maybe they'll change it a little. Maybe it'll be fewer years. Not that that is really going to make any real difference.
Make a difference to me.
They are talking. They are talking about something where maybe they would have people go in and be tested before they donate, but they're afraid of the cost on that, and is that discriminatory? But, they're continuing to look at it.
And we've told you about pre-exposure prophylaxis, and the Fenway Institute in Boston was very high on it. Now the LA AIDS Healthcare Foundation has petitioned the FDA not to say, it's only partially effective. And then there's this study out of Africa with women. Now they say maybe the women didn't take the drugs all the time.
Exactly.
But it's not, but I mean, again.
But that's the news, that they didn't take the drugs all the time. That they called off the study because it didn't seem to be working, and now they've got the results back from their blood tests about how much of the drug was in their blood, and the answer was 0. So that may be why it wasn't working.
Right.
All right. ACT UP continues planning for its 25th anniversary demonstration in the Wall Street area on April 25th. Meetings continue at the community center here on Mondays at 7 p.m. There's a lot of good work being done. And if you want to get involved, come to the community center at 208 West 13th Street on Mondays at 7 p.m.
Now, I've been sitting here through this entire show wanting to know what your news is about the Sarah Palin documentary on the Reels Network and what gay aspect there is. So can I know now?
Yes, 2 Sarah Palin movies. Game Change on HBO. Yeah. What'd you think?
Well, as a person who's worked as a political operative, I thought it was a little didactic and basic.
I thought it was cartoonish.
Yeah, and I didn't think I will say, watching Julianne Moore, because that's who it was, I would forget that it was Julianne Moore watching her.
She did a good job.
Yeah.
But it was
the John McCain was kind of a Saturday Night Live kind of John MCCain done by Ed Harris.
He didn't even have a pen in his hand. And clearly everything came from Steve Schmidt, who was the star.
Traitor.
I was very interested that he was willing to explicitly condemn her so much. And then on Morning Joe the next morning saying it would have been a disaster to have
She
her
may be the next presidential nominee if there's a brokered convention.
She could be. And you would have believed that more if you watched the other movie, The Undefeated, which is the conservative version, and which took her reading her book, Going Rogue, as audio, running through the movie and quoted, and then interviewed a lot of people who supported her.
You had to listen to that voice for the entire book?
It went through her entire Alaska career before she was nominated, and what a hero she was for going up against the oil companies and everything. It was quite fascinating and gave you a different point of view.
Well, that's how she made her name.
Absolutely. When she was nominated, we thought, wow, this crusader has been
nominated. In Game
nominated.
Change, I mean, they show her being interviewed by Charlie Rose. I don't remember that, but before she was even a factor, she was a big enough figure to be on the Charlie Rose show.
And in The Undefeated, they show her giving a speech about all the great things she's doing, and it may have been a Tea Party convention because they went through her defeat in the campaign and on to the Tea Party. And she stands there at a podium in front of hundreds of people, and it's snowing in Alaska or whatever, and she's talking about some issue, and she says, "We're here, we're clear, get used to it."
What does that mean? They're white? She's very much for the white people.
I thought when Sarah Palin is picking up Queer Nation slogans and amending them to her use, we have really penetrated the culture.
Well, maybe she can have a new show on Logo.
Yes!
Because they're dumping gay programming on Logo. Logo was founded for gay programming, and now they're just basically going to, it's no big deal.
Their excuse is gay people are interested in more than just gay programming. Yes, they're interested in Bravo, and that's why you're trying to grab that audience.
They're interested in good programming.
Well, they're keeping RuPaul's Drag Race as the only LGBT-specific show, but then the rest is going to be things like Design My Dog.
Too many commercials on that network.
But HBO is going to be doing a series from the Jeffrey Eugenides book, Middlesex, which is about a transgender hero, which I love the book. Rita Wilson's producing it, and it's being written by the playwright Donald Margulies, who did Dinner with Friends, won a Pulitzer Prize.
Sure.
So look forward to that.
A couple of plays to tell you about this week. Eugene O'Neill's first full-length play has been Beyond the Horizon, one of those Connecticut farm plays, has been revived at the Irish Repertory Theatre. I saw a wonderful production of this in London several years ago. This one is okay, but I mean, it does have academic interest because it's the it's the beginning of all of his stuff. Beyond the Horizon at that, and then. Tina Howe, always wanted to see Painting Churches. So did you, but you didn't go.
I decided to stay home and watch the Sarah Palin movie.
I wanted to see it because Kathleen Chalfant from Angels in America was, one of the stars. And, she's good in everything, but the play really doesn't hold up. It's from 1983, Painting Churches. It gets a little better in the second act if you can put up with the first act.
And you saw the David France movie.
I finally did. We can discuss it. How to Survive a Plague, which is not going to have its theatrical release until September.
But this is one of two movies about ACT UP and the AIDS activist movement in the late 80s and early 90s.
Two of the stars are Gay USA veterans, Ann Northrup and Bill Ballman, our associate producer.
Who's out at the CROI conference in Seattle right now.
So look, watching it was very powerful in terms of bringing back all those memories of that time. The intensity of it was tremendous. And of course, it mainly focuses on the treatment action group activists, people like Peter Staley and Mark Harrington and Garance Frank-Arruda.
It's a great model for activism. So we'll tell you more about that and the other ACT UP movie, United in Anger by Sarah Schulman and Jim Hubbard as those come along.
And we'll see you next week. We hope we have better news.
Bye.